My name is Shannon Bolt, and I'm here today at SOMARTS is the location that is hosting us, and we're having the St. Francis Homelessness Challenge. And what we're looking at is a presentation I created about the criminalization of homelessness in San Francisco and also California. You can see that, a lot of, this is what we hear a lot from house people, is that there ought to be a law against various activities that homeless people are forced to partake in by necessity, such as sleeping on the streets or in the park. And so you can see in this over here that Dianne Feinstein, it was really under her administration that homelessness began to be criminalized. And that's really a statewide trend, that the number of, a nationwide trend that criminalization of homelessness really starts in the 80s. And then it was Art Agnos who started doing sweeps. So that would what we might consider enforcement of these laws, where he's sweeping the camps in Golden Gate Park, Cole Valley, and Civic Center, and starting to displace people who have already been displaced, right? They don't have any place to go. And then it's Frank Jordan. Frank Jordan, I didn't even know who he was until I was doing research for this. And he's really the mayor who takes what Art and Dianne started and says, okay, I'm gonna double down on that. And really starts saying nasty things about the homeless in the press, and kind of becomes the first one to really have a kind of anti-homeless platform. And then, as you can see under Willie Brown, that's all of the sweeps and the laws are just expanded exponentially. But also, we start to see how much these policies are starting to cost us, and how little they're working. So you can also see some of the trends of the number of citations over time, compared to population count has remained relatively stable over a similar time, but you have this huge change in citations. And this is from the SFPD, but remember Parks and Rec, who manage the parks, are also giving out a number of citations. That started in 2011. And so these citations have a really extensive impact, which had to have been known by by the time Willie Brown is doing this. We know that these leads, that when you don't pay a citation, it leads to ridiculous fines. Eventually you get an arrest warrant, and then you go to jail if you haven't resolved a citation for sleeping on the street. And you see that the income source for most people living on the street, only 40% of those people are getting governmental support in terms of their income. And then most of them are panhandling and recycling, and doing other sorts of things that are bringing minimal work to pay these citations, and certainly not the outrageous fee when the fine increases. And then Gavin Newsom, again, even though we see a decrease in the citations under Gavin, you still have a lot of anti-homelessness programs going on. And then Ed Lee, we're still in his reign, if you will, but he's already proved to not be a very friendly mayor to the homeless. And again, you see so Lee came in 2011, you see a big spike in citations go up again. And so I think that this data really clearly shows how these laws have failed to have an impact. You can certainly see they're not reducing homelessness. And you'd also see that some of the data we don't have up here is actually the number of homeless who were counted in jail. And so you do see those numbers shift over time as well. And so the second version of this presentation will have that data, as well as a map that actually shows which of these mayors had which encampments removed, and how many people were displaced when. Because that's happening, it's repeated over and over in the same areas. And I think it's important that those of us who aren't impacted by these decisions recognize how ineffective these policies of sweeping and displacement and unnecessary criminalization, they're just not effective at all.
Okay, and now you can tell me something about what we are going today, and this event today?
So this event was the brainchild of Amy Farrah Weiss, who was one of our mayoral candidates against Ed Lee in 2015, November. And so after receiving, the opponents of Lee received 44% of the vote, over 70,000 votes collectively. And so Amy took that momentum and she said, you know, I'm actually going to do something about one of the issues that people really liked about my platform when I was running for mayor. And so she didn't let the fact that she wasn't elected mayor stop her from making this a reality. And so what she's challenged, so it's called the St. Francis Homelessness Challenge. And she's challenging us as individuals and the different governments around the Bay Area and around the country to actually create innovative change and solutions to either ease the suffering of homeless people or to end homelessness altogether. And so today we actually have behind my presentation, you see what's called a route home. And this is a pretty cool unit that is made from two used Google server containers. I don't totally know what that means, but basically they're two big metal boxes that are welded together and then made into this creative home with shingles that's much more attractive and safer than just living in a tent. And so this is the concept of a safe sleep sanctuary, which is one of the two fundamental parts of this showcase today. And the idea is that, you know, tents will keep you dry, but they don't keep you safe, and you're constantly being under the threat of being removed or attacked. And so this safe sleep structure will allow homeless people to be able to actually get a good night's rest. And we know that rest is really important because people who don't get proper sleep actually have significantly increased risk for all sorts of disease, and being homeless is already a risk factor for increased disease. And so if we can reduce the sleep issue, then that's actually increasing not only the quality of life, but actually the health of people who have struggled with not having a brick and mortar home. And then to go along with that idea, we have a decadome here that's kind of showcasing the idea of a healing hub. And so the healing hub is an idea of what if we use, so both of these are, what if we use underutilized public land, much of which is already being de facto used as homeless encampments. What if we provided some structures that are actually portable, so they're semi-permanent, they're safe and warm. This decadome is actually up to fire code, which is a pretty amazing thing. And so we're actually encouraging the different city departments to consider the decadome as an opportunity for emergency housing, both for the homeless and in the event of disasters. And so it can be put up and disassembled in 2 hours. And so it's a really great opportunity to provide rotating health services. So kind of like we have available at projects like Project Homeless Connect already in San Francisco, where service providers come to a centralized location where homeless people can access services. Healing hubs would provide the opportunity for service providers that, like the ones that go to Project Homeless Connect, to come directly to the people, as well as anybody else willing to donate their time for services to the homeless. And it really gives it's a great model that Amy came up with to have these healing hubs in conjunction with the sleep sanctuary. And those two, so it's a two-part idea, and we're encouraging the city to pilot a program where these kinds of structures will actually be putting underutilized public space to good use and immediately making a difference in our absolutely epidemic levels of homelessness in the city, which is, you know, long been a struggle that the traditional plans have not been able to fix. So that's the idea behind Amy's idea of innovative solutions to address homelessness, because it's really going to take a lot of all of us thinking outside the box, you know? And so that's why we're here today. We're providing services, we're modeling these concepts. We've provided food for our homeless neighbors. That's another part of the project, is making sure that our unhoused neighbors are actually part of the project and involved and their own advocates, right? So we're not just like swooping in and doing something that they don't want. So Amy actually did some surveys and some data gathering before kind of finalizing these concepts of the idea of the event. And so it's a way to both, the showcase is an opportunity to both to showcase this concept, to make those of us who have houses and have that privilege to be aware of some of the systemic difficulties facing the homeless, as well as providing services and supplies that the homeless might need, and of course food. And it's also a great way to build community. You know, SOMARTS is a long, upstanding community organization, and so by them hosting us here, it's really an opportunity for neighbors to come together and say, I absolutely care about my homeless neighbors, and I want to make sure that they have a dignified life, just like I get to have, and that we have that social safety net, and we're going to build it together.
Sounds good. Do you want to add anything out that we can make the people know what's going on?
Yeah, well, so if you want, this doesn't end today. This is really just the first project, and we did it today on the 2nd of January in response to Mayor Ed Lee's comments about the homeless having to just leave when the Super Bowl fan party comes to town in February and takes over the Embarcadero. And so we're encouraging folks to continue challenging themselves, to ask yourself, how can you actively participate in creating positive, innovative solutions to this issue that is really affects all of us in the city, even if we try to look the other way. And so we have a group on Facebook, St. Francis Homelessness Challenge, that you can join if you want to keep participating. There's also a page that you can like with more information. Some of the great organizations to be aware of that are helping us are concern.org. That's CONCRN.org. They're a great organization that you can contact in lieu of the police if you notice somebody in crisis who you think that might need some support services and some de-escalation. You can contact the folks from Concern and they'll come out. We also want to thank Hand Up, which is another group supporting the homeless in getting opportunity. Basically, it's kind of like a GoFundMe for things that the homeless want or need to better their situation. So one of the things that we might be doing in the future is connecting folks to their own route homes. And so definitely check out the website, stfrancishomelessnesschallenge.com, I believe is the website as well. If it's not, you can go to find us through Facebook. And definitely don't stop here. If you're not local, ask yourself what you can do in your local community, and feel free to reach out to our project to see how we can partner for regional projects as well, because this isn't just a San Francisco problem.